Good morning and welcome to BCN's live webinar all around smarter data. My name's Emma Portlock and I head up new business here at BCN. And as a managed service provider, we work with both our customers and our prospects to really help that drive efficiency and profitability in companies. And we're finding at the heart of that is data, and hence the webinar today. So what are we going to cover? We're going to do a little welcome in a moment to the team. We're going to have a panel discussion all around what are today's business challenges? What are we actually seeing out with our customers? We're then going to give a demo of actually turning data into results. What do we actually see when we start using data and what can we build on that? And then we're going to do some glassboarding sessions all around building your data and also securing your data, because clearly, whilst data is at the heart of everything we do, we absolutely have to ensure it's secure. We then cover some next steps where we turn those insights into actions. It's all very well talking, but how do we get you on that journey? Where do you start? And then we'll have some closing remarks and some Q&A. So with no further ado, we will move on to some introductions. Hello, as I mentioned at the top of the webinar, I am Emma Portlock. I'm Head of New Business here at BCN, but now it's time to introduce you to the rest of the team. So over to you, Divya, to introduce yourself first.
Thank you, Emma. Hello, everyone. I'm Divya. I'm the data engineer with BCN. I mostly work with backend data, ingesting data, extraction, transformation of data, and all the backend stuff. Thank you.
Amazing, thank you. And now over to you, Mark.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Matt Rotheram. I'm BCN's Chief Technology Officer, so I look after all the technology for BCN and our customers.
Amazing, thank you. And but last but by no means least, over to you, Fraser.
Hi everyone, my name is Fraser and I head up BCN's AI and data innovation approach. I spend most of my time working with clients, instilling use cases and getting the return on investment and value for our businesses.
Amazing, thank you very much, team. So moving back to the topic of smarter data, one of the things we first start off with all of our customers is like, let's look at the business challenge, what's actually happening behind the scenes here. So Mark, if I kind of turn to you on this one, we're obviously seeing really rising costs across the economy, national insurance, for example. What kind of efficiencies or productivity are you seeing that can be used around data to help with that?
Yeah, so I think just touching on the cost element for a moment, one of the most interesting things we've seen over the last year is the continuing pivot from innovation to kind of deal with new ideas. Mm-hmm. And it's pivoted into actually we've really got to drive cost out. We've got to do more with less. So the innovation is kind of being forced on our customers from a kind of lens on where are they wasting time? Where are they doing lots of manual effort? Where have they got teams that are running really hot that they don't want to employ more people into? So what we're seeing is the focus more on how do we relieve the stress in those teams without hiring? How do we get them to be more productive and do something more useful? So a lot of the innovation we're talking about now is really looking at things that are boring. It's repetitive things that we can start to automate and put AI around. So it's all around freeing people up so that they can do more interesting work. But also that release valve in the business that says, right, we don't need to hire. The team are big enough now and they can manage that demand, whatever it is. And we use our AI and our automation tools to help power that business and make it go forward. So it's really that change in where the money's being spent and how they're perceiving innovation from it's something we'd like to do. We've got a bit of budget. We're not going to try something new through to actually we're now forced to do something to stay alive and stay competitive.
Excellent, thank you. That's really good insight. So I think one of the biggest challenges we all see is it's really hard to recruit into this space, right? So, Fraser, from your experience of having worked really closely firsthand with customers, what are you seeing around the whole recruitment and challenges around that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Emma. The space is kind of split in two because we've got the large-scale data analytical skill sets. And there are lots of people in the market today who have some of those skill sets, but perhaps have been working in an organization for a long time. So they don't have the cutting-edge fabric, for example, some of the more advanced Azure analytical elements within their resume. Whereas when we start to look at the AI space, it's such a new technology, it's such a new activity that people don't have a degree in generative AI. They don't have those skill sets readily available as a kind of checkbox on that kind of paper sift. So it's a really difficult space to find good skilled candidates in. The way I kind of think about it is, do they have a background of business logic? Do they understand what data means? And do they understand that kind of risk landscape? And I think, with Microsoft in particular, there's the kind of the low code and no code elements, which can really help businesses start to think, well, actually, what can we do in this space? And AI really has transformed some of the more basic elements that can be done, but they do come with some risk elements. And I think if a business is starting today going, actually, should I buy this or should I grow it? I would suggest partnering with an organization that understands the space, has the right skill sets to enable you, and actually once you've proven that value proposition with a partner, then start to think, how do I build team internally to my organization?
Yeah, thank you, Fraser. And then the other way, obviously, to grow skills is through acquisition. And we were lucky enough to get you, Divya, through one of our key acquisitions. So just interested to know a little bit more about your background, how you got the love of data and where you skilled up.
Yeah. So I skilled up on data through my job because I studied electrical engineering, and then all my data experience comes hands-on working with data, and because my experience started in healthcare, I'm very fond of working with healthcare data, patient data. It's something I get satisfaction working with, and to see the impact that it has in the real time in the patient care is something that motivates me to continue working with data challenges in the healthcare industry.
Amazing. Thank you. And I think kind of one of the key things I see, guys, is when people have very disconnected systems. So people have lots of different systems and parts of those systems have data on one bit, but data on another. You must have come across it in healthcare. So again, if I go to Fraser, what have you seen through kind of disconnected systems and how we can really help and support in that area?
Yeah, I think disconnected business systems really stymie an organization's ability to look across an organization's pulling it together into either a consolidated data set, whether it's using something like a Fabric or a Lake environment. You could do some data warehousing. There's all sorts of technology that you can implement in here to bring those systems together. Or you could go full fat. You could start to think about APIs and having the systems fully connected. But the reality is, putting it together and getting insight to that data faster is the key. It's about the outcome. Don't just join the data sets for no reason. Why do you need to join those data sets? Is it about getting more value for a customer? Is it about getting faster insight? Is it about a trend that you can't see without bringing those two systems together? That's the key.
Okay, fantastic. And I guess, again, from, I'll kind of hold it out to the team, from the experience we've got of working with customers, have we got a challenge that we've seen where people are really struggling to get that central business view? Mark, if you want to try giving that a go to answer?
Yeah, I think most customers we engage with are the smaller size going to medium. They're all looking in Excel. Yeah, that is the business system. Yeah, you've got email and Excel. They're great systems, but it's not very easy to get insights out of those. So the first thing that we typically do is turn Excel into something that's trusted. It's a source of truth that they can use. That might just be as simple as one Excel spreadsheet. It could be a workbook. It could be 5 or 10. So making that small leap from an Excel-based workflow into, we'll use the Excel to feed in a source of truth and then start working around that is a massive leap. It can be transformative, just making that simple step, and you can build from that, increase the number of systems, the data, and get as complicated as you want. So it's sometimes it's just that small step that really helps start to bring data together so you can use it and trust it.
Yes, so thank you, Mark. And as we know, spreadsheets are my nemesis, so I can completely identify with that. I guess on the back of spreadsheets, there's then often you find kind of a lot of manual process. There's a lot of manual sort of visualization on top of that. So just expand on that a little bit more for us as well, Mark.
Yeah, I guess what we see happen an awful lot in our customer base is Microsoft have done a great job with making Power BI a citizen developer tool. So they have a go at it. Army have a go at it. They try and put some Power BI over the top of Excel, create a dashboard, and then send it out saying, look, this is awesome. And on the face of it, it might look awesome, but they tend to fall into traps very quickly. And the first one, and the one that is the main issue, is what I mentioned already, the single source of truth. As soon as the data doesn't match, it becomes untrusted. And as soon as the tech becomes untrusted, it doesn't get adopted. So we spend an awful lot of time rescuing a good idea and putting together data pipelines that provide the governance and the control, the security around the data so that you can trust what you're seeing when you get that dashboard. So it's that kind of leap into Power BI is brilliant, but you've got to do it in the right way, knowing how it's going to be structured, how it's going to scale, and how you're going to distribute that in a way that makes it a trusted data set rather than something that falls flat on its face and goes nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And, certainly for one who's someone more visual than Excel or numbers, to bring it to life through a dashboard is something that, I find really, really useful in my job. So, thank you, team. I think that's given us some really good insights into some of the business challenges customers are seeing around data. And just to recap, those are kind of mainly how we kind of get one central, real, truthful version of the data, how we visualize and report on that, the skills gap that we're seeing, and how we get people, like Divya through into our companies. What we're going to move on to next is a real life example of a customer we've been working with recently called Peak4. And Mark is going to take us through some of those similar challenges and how we've supported and helped them.
So now we're going to look at one of our customer case studies. But before we dig into what we did for Peak4 and how we did it, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we need customers to evolve into to be successful in this day and age with data and AI. And the way I kind of find best to explain this is to look at kind of three key roles within the business. The first role is all around data, and it's the data champion. It's someone that really understands the data of the business, the value of that data and what the potential could be. The whole idea here is that we get to a point where we're making data-led decisions that are adding value. The second role is all around process. And this person is really the process champion. It's someone that can define a good process, they can refine it, they can optimize it, and they can make sure that those processes are really doing what they need to do. And then finally, we look at artificial intelligence. Now, I put the chief prompt officer on there. For a year or so, that was a real role until people realized they could get the prompts from AI. But the idea here is someone that understands artificial intelligence. They understand what the capabilities are, what to try and do, what to wait to do, and what's available right now. So the idea here with these roles is to make sure we've got the right things joined together, understanding the data, kneading that into a process, and then layering AI across the top is how we can get the best efficient use of this kind of digital transformation into our customers. So now we're going to watch a little bit of Dave from Peak4 explain a bit of the challenge that he had with the solution there.
I'm David Horrocks. I'm a director of Peak4 and one of the founders. Peak4 brings sports science into the workplace. Lots of time and money is spent on technology, infrastructure and plant and machinery. And what we've found is there is nowhere near enough finance spent on the actual human being. Through wearable devices, we collect physiological data from human beings. Sleep efficiency, heart rate variability. We then collate that onto a platform and we can then make recommendations for them to be able to be the best they can possibly be. Peak4 brought sports science and sports expertise to the table. BCN brought technology to the table, and BCN have been instrumental in terms of turning that sports data into real world data for our clients.
So the approach that we took to solving the Peak4 challenge was to really take a big step back and look at all of the capabilities that we have to solve the different areas of challenge. So what we're showing here is a bunch of the different components that we used to kind of bring the Peak4 end-to-end solution together. Now, this isn't a traditional IT stack. What we call this is a set of converged architecture. So it's basically looking at everything from really simple no-code capabilities such as Microsoft Forms, all the way through to more advanced technologies such as Fabric, Azure and artificial intelligence. And the idea here is that we're choosing the best of breed components at each point in that Peak4 solution to give us the speed, the agility, the robustness and the security that was needed to achieve the outcome. It wasn't a case of choose one platform and develop everything in one big block. It was very agile in its development. At certain points, we've swapped components in and out. But the key message really is having the most efficient use of technology to solve the Peak 4 challenges, whether that is really simple bits of technology or really hard where we have to write software to do specific things. That's really the differentiator here. It's how we brought these different converged technologies together in one really neat solution that could accelerate Peak 4 and bring the outcomes that they wanted. So now we're going to step into a bit of a demo of what it looks like. So we're going to give you two views. One of the Power App, which is really the command center, and the second one is of the data dashboard, which is where all the insights are and where the decisions can be made. So this is just a quick walkthrough of the interface we've built to kind of put the command and control in for Peak 4. So this is a Power App, and in here it's showing the home page with kind of a snapshot of information that's available to the team that are managing this deployment. So in here we can see different measures, different links, different impacts that are coming through from the surveys. You can also see individual user data coming through as well. And we can filter that, we can make it really easy to navigate through to the areas that we want to interact with. So this is using our low-code platform, and part of the reason for using this was to give us the agility to change it very quickly to give Peak 4 what they needed. Now, as we get into the next screen, this is where all of the really clever artificial intelligence comes to life. So over on the left, you've got our generated content. This is content that's coming from the Polar device and from the surveys, and it's generative AI text that's going to be sent through to the individual user on a specific frequency that's going to give them all of their insights. So again, this is really designed to be flexible. So if we want to change something in this Power App, we can do, and it allows us to expand it for certain customers as needed, and also cut things out if we don't need them as well. So it's got a full security wraparound here. The idea is that we're using the Microsoft ecosystem, so everything that goes in this app stays within the same security boundaries as the rest of the data set. So it's a really secure way of kind of providing this capability. The next section that we're getting into is all around the Power BI dashboard. So again, this is part of the same Microsoft ecosystem. All of the data is secure in the platform. So we've got some really good rigor around how we manage that. And what we've got is a set of different dashboards that let us slice the data, dig into all of the different metrics that have been fed from the Peak 4 device and from those surveys, that lets the team at Peak 4 start to recommend interventions. And the whole idea with this platform is that we can start to make recommendations to the team. They can go and put them in the field and log those as changes, and then we can come back in here and validate whether those changes actually had the desired impact or not. So it's a really powerful way of seeing how a workforce behaves based on interventions that are fed into them from the data that's coming out of the devices that they're wearing.
So thank you very much, Mark. Really great insights into Peak 4 and what we've done and continue to do with them. I guess for the listeners out there that have or are part of businesses, how can they apply what they've just seen you go through?
I think the great thing about the Peak 4 example is the wide variety of tech stacks that are available that we can knit together to bring together complex solutions. So it can be anything from a really simple problem that needs addressing all the way through to something really complicated. The value in what we've shown is that we've got an arsenal of capability that we can use in a converged way that will answer whatever solution we're challenged with as quickly and as efficiently as we can.
Okay, that's amazing. And I guess on the next kind of part of that, what is the first step that people can do out there to replicate this kind of business? What's the first thing they can do?
The easiest first step is to start off with something small, a minimal viable product or a proof of concept, test it, get some feedback. Working with Peak 4, what you saw wasn't the first version, it was version 5 or 6 that we've gone through with them. So getting feedback from the first deployments and learning from those deployments is absolutely critical at this stage. And that's why having an agile approach and an agile tool set that we can use to tweak and tune as appropriate rather than building something huge which would cost a lot of money to change was really important.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for that. And just the outcome of all of that, what can businesses, if they do embark on that kind of first step, the journey that you've talked about, what can they expect to get from it?
The main takeaway is they can start to disrupt, and they can disrupt other businesses that are trying to do something that aren't as advanced or aren't embracing technology. The Peak 4 example, again, was really useful because we didn't have anything to deal with. We had no technical debt. So it was a really good example of what good looks like right now using the best of breed technology. So if you can get to that point where you can use best of breed technology, you're really going to differentiate yourselves against people that can't do that. So it's really important to try and make use of those tools that are available today and do it in a meaningful way.
Excellent, thank you. And I remember the first time you told me about Peak 4 and the scenario, it was completely new. Hadn't heard anything like that before. So yeah, really appreciate your time. Thank you ever so much, Mark. So we're now going to move on to Divya, who's actually going to take you through a glassboarding session of how do you begin to really unpick that data, unpick those processes. So how can you as a company start on the journey that Mark's shown you with Peak 4? Thank you very much.
Today, we'll explore structured and unstructured data, what they are, how they differ, and how automation can help process them. We'll have structured here, unstructured here. Now, structured data is something most businesses are familiar with. CRM systems, financial ledgers, inventory databases, and our favorite, Excel spreadsheets. As the name suggests, structured data has a definitive structure to it. It is neatly organized into rows and columns. Now, this makes it easier to process the data. Now, with structured data, it is easier to search and identify a record. It is easier to group and sort the records, and it is also easier to aggregate the records to get sum and average values. Unstructured data, on the other hand, is messy because it does not have a fixed format. It does not fit into tables and are mostly free text. Some of the examples are customer reviews, emails, social media posts, documents, PDFs, Word documents, image files, and video files. Now, it is said that 80% of the business data is made up of unstructured data, and it is growing fast. And this data, due to its lack of structure, is something that's tricky to process. Automation is a game changer for both the data types. For structured data sources, traditional automation tools work well in aggregating the data, generating reports, flagging anomalies, and forecasting trends, etc. With unstructured data, with the help of modern AI tools, we can, for example, summarize customer feedback. We can detect sentiment in the social media posts. We can analyze unstructured data like clinical notes to gain insights on patient care. Now, let us see how we can keep this data secured. Securing enterprise data is no longer about locking down the databases. Securing unstructured data is quite tricky because the data is spread across emails, documents, and files all over the place. The security concerns and measures for structured data and unstructured data vary significantly. Now, let's start with the structured data. Structured data, because they are usually maintained in databases, can be protected using firewalls and encryption. Other than that, we can have more granular access for having right people to access the right data by having teams access subsets of data which is pertinent to them. Securing unstructured data is a bit trickier, but we can achieve this by adding a bit of structure to the unstructured data. Let's see how we can do that with an example. Let's say the HR department, for example, has thousands of documents, and this can be resumes, performance reviews, job contracts, policy documents, etc. Now, we can employ modern tools driven by AI to review these documents and classify them according to their content and add metadata information. So what does the metadata information look like? So it can analyze the documents and add tags like who created the document, what kind of document it is, and when was it created. Now there are content classification algorithms supported by AI which can look into these document contents and identify if it includes personal information or regulatory information so that it can be classified into private and confidential documents or internal documents or external documents. We can use data loss protection tools like Microsoft Purview and configure rules based on these tags to protect the unstructured data. Be it structured data or unstructured data, it is important to understand the data assets within the organization and how and where it is stored and secured. As I mentioned in the beginning, data is the new oil. Understanding the nature of the data and how it is secured is the key to business success.
So, Divya, thank you for such great informative glassboarding sessions. It was really, really interesting. So obviously you touched a lot on data process, but just also really interested on data quality and why you think data quality is so critical to having that transformational success as well.
Right data leads to right insights. If the data is inconsistent or incomplete or inaccurate, even with the best use of technology, the resulting outcomes are going to be unreliable. So data quality is very key in making use of this technology efficiently.
So really just going back to the point that if you've got really bad data coming in, no matter what you've done in the middle to transform, etc., you're going to have bad data that you can't make sort of good decisions on in the first place. So I guess just enhancing that, what are the risks then associated if you don't actually secure that data? What would that mean to a company?
Yeah, so the impacts of a security breach are in multiple areas. So it can be a strategic impact or an operational impact, or it can have like compliance violences and reputational impact. So it is very key that the data is secure and it doesn't derail the company's digital transformation journey by having any sort of unwarranted incidents like, reputational breach or compliance violations.
Absolutely. So absolutely critical that security is important. Yeah. So I guess, Mark, how can a company still innovate whilst they're still trying to be compliant and secure?
Yeah, the best answer to that is treat security as just a standard thing you do all the way through your entire life cycle. So secure by design, right at the offset, to make sure that you've got all the right principles, what you want to adhere to and how you want to adhere to them, all the way through into the project, making sure that each check gate, each component is secure to the right level. And then as you go into production, it's a loop then at that point where you've got to continuously keep an eye on the security posture of your solution, your business, and react to anything that's coming externally, whether that's a threat or a vulnerability. So yeah, it's basically baking security into everything you do. It is the best way to stay secure.
Amazing, thank you. So yeah, definitely shows the importance of having, data quality, but also making sure you secure it. Thank you so much, guys. So next session, we are moving on to Fraser's going to take us through a specific customer use case and seeing how we can make great return on investment. Thank you.
Hi again, everyone. That Peak 4 use case really does demonstrate the breadth and depth of all of the different technical capabilities the BCN brought to the table to give that client the particular outcome they were looking for. This section, we're going to start to look at the return of investment, the business case that we build around all of our clients' engagements to ensure you get exactly what you need and don't have to worry about all the tech stuff. So if we take a little step through time, let's go back to perhaps when some of you listening were enjoying the delights of that super tech thing called the fax machine. Do you remember saying, oh, it will never become part of our organization? I love going on my long distance trips and then when I get back, filling out my triplicate bits of paper. Do you remember that time? Or perhaps actually you may be thinking about that engagement of, Excel and Word. Oh my God, it's amazing. But the reality being, we are now at that next transition point. We're at that point where AI and generative content, predictive analytics, machine learning is the next step in your business evolution. Now, there will be those of you today on the call whose businesses are being run in Excel. I know it because I've seen it with some of our clients. The challenge that we have in this space is that your competitors are already looking at the next generation of particularly business systems, but also generative content, which will drive the value of their business forward. So let's start with the big picture. Microsoft suggests that already businesses are using AI at a rate of about 75%. Now that's huge. Microsoft are also reporting that 80% of business users are bringing their own AI into the workplace, and this is cause for concern. Imagine the scene. You're taking your critical business jewel data and you're putting it into a system that you do not know where that data is being processed, stored, or reused. That's dangerous for an organization. And so when we start to think about, small to medium-sized businesses, we're seeing numbers from a return on investment perspective for actual secure data-based internal business systems ranging from about 130% to 360%. What does that mean? What kind of metrics should we be considering when we're thinking about the return of what actually could be a transformative system for your business? So there are three main categories here. The first is efficiency. What do I mean by efficiency? Efficiency could be a business process challenge, a bottleneck in your organization, or a slow, mundane task that uses lots and lots of people to do repetitive tasks. And that will drive efficiency in your business and, of course, impact your bottom line. The second is revenue. Well, some might say, well, revenue is efficiency, right? Well, no. Actually, there are direct revenue benefits that can be seen by implementing AI and machine learning into your operations to suggest the next purchase, to find that client who stopped buying from you. And the last will be speed. Speed in decision making. So this is where we're starting to think about predictive analytics, machine learning, understanding your data estate in a holistic sense. Now, you might think, oh, okay, well, that all sounds great, but I need a big project for that. Well, the UK government has actually just released a paper where they've gone through the demonstration of value from Microsoft's 365 Copilot. And in that paper, what we find is that the government are reporting 26 minutes per person per day of savings just from deploying the M365 Copilot. That's a product. There's no big transformational program. There's no analytics data layer. It's literally just turning on a license. 26 minutes. How many employees? 20,000 employees. Hang on a minute, that's nearly 500,000 minutes. That's 8,666 hours of saving. That's enormous. So you don't need a huge program. It can be as simple as turning on a license. So that was the UK government with a potential huge return of investment on what was a very simple turn on. Here, we're going to look at a particular use case with BCN. One of our clients came to us who are in the financial services sector, and they were struggling with slow processes, large volumes of data, inaccuracies due to different members of the team doing the same task. And this was leading directly to customer dissatisfaction. When one agent picked up a task, it was very different than if another agent picked up a task. And ultimately what the client was looking to do was streamline the operation because they wanted to scale. And what they couldn't do was scale effectively with the current process they had. And so what did we do? We sat down with the client and we understood what that outcome needed to be for them. We analysed some data sets. We looked at active emails, we looked at transcripts, we looked at documents, and actually the outcome of that piece of work with this one client is saving them 100 hours a month. Now, this wasn't a huge team. This was quite a small team and quite a modest engagement. But the reality was the outcome for this client of saving 100 hours per month equated to a return of investment on the active work that we did for them of 471%. That's not over 3 years, that's over a single year. And so, akin to what we've been talking about all day today, start small, understand the use case, and be very clear about what the return of investment needs to be for your organization, and then start. So that's what I'm going to cover today, and now I'd like to hand over to Emma, who's going to go through how Microsoft can help you fund getting that return of investment.
So Fraser's just given us some great insights into a specific customer use case of return on investment. I just wanted to add a little bit of value here just to take you through some of the funding programs that Microsoft run to actually, again, help you on that journey and help with the investments. So I don't know if people are aware, but a few years back, Microsoft used to grade their partners gold, silver, bronze, and it basically meant how many licenses did you buy from Microsoft. Significantly changed that partner program because we're finding that customers weren't actually aware of some of the deep capabilities within the Microsoft tech stack. So they created what's called designations, and those are designations across all of the different Microsoft workloads, whether it's from data to infrastructure to security. There are then specializations within those designations that are only available to partners if you go through rigorous tests from Microsoft. And that might be letting Microsoft see where you've deployed certain solution areas into customers, as well as really deep technical certifications. Why does that matter? Why does that matter to customers? Getting those specializations then unlocks sometimes significant pots of funding to help you on that journey. Because lots of the things that we're covering today is, where do you actually start? Is this the right thing for you to be doing? And Microsoft can often help you with partners like ourselves start on that journey. So specifically around data and AI that we're talking about today, there's a pot of funding within that with the specialization that we've gained to be able to actually discover what data do you have, how big does that look like, and what kind of migration does that look like, and can we offset some of the costs? Or we've identified a specific process that you might have. Let's use a bit of a Power App or a Power Automate to see if that's something that we could use across your business. So it's probably the most favourite bit of my job, is working out how I can help customers to spend Microsoft's money. Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much for that insight, Fraser, that you just took us through. And I guess, obviously we all went through what challenges we're seeing. You've then shown us the wide, diverse tech that there is to support. So why do you think companies aren't actually making use of this and embarking on that journey?
Yeah, it's a good question, Emma. I think what I kind of see happening is clients kind of have two modes. The first mode is kind of fear and unwilling to change. And I think the second mode is the kind of acceptance that, not many businesses get to start with a green sheet. So usually what's happened is an organization's data is kind of sprawled out across some on-prem servers, maybe some SharePoint stuff, lots of stuff in Excel, hidden in people's C drives. And then all of a sudden we say, let's turn on AI. And they kind of go, I don't even know where to start with this kind of approach. So I think it's mixed. I think that kind of infrastructure piece is a challenge for some businesses, but it's also acceptance that this is actually a really business critical element. And sadly, in most of the businesses that we work with, that doesn't necessarily hit the top radar. So it's not the thing that's getting the attention in the organization.
Yeah, excellent. And Mark, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think the other thing that's still as relevant as it was years ago as it is now, it's around your data integrity. It's how confident are we that the security layers on this data are right, and that if we do put AI in it, it's not going to elevate something that we don't want people to find, or even worse, bad data that's just wrong. There's a really great habit of creating version 1 of a file, and then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. AI doesn't know that version 1 was wrong. It'll go and look at that and say, actually, these are the right numbers. So having good data and data security, if you've not got those things, is a real blocker for some companies to embrace AI and really turn on all these advanced analytical features that it can bring to bear.
Yeah, and as you say, it's absolutely critical to this working properly. And I guess, Divya, I'm just really interested from a more sort of technical delivery perspective, projects that you've worked on, either some insight on either what's worked really well or definitely the things not to do. Would just be great to have a little bit of insight.
Yeah. Thinking back, Emma, I think the projects that we know have been like really successful are the ones that we started with data discovery. We spent time with the client and understood their data before embarking on the project. And I think that's a key to success of a data project. Also, approaching the project as in an agile manner rather than as a one whole big bang is something, again, which I think ensured the success of data projects, because we could target the data sources break them down into chunks and address the problems, data quality issues, and ensure that the project was successful.
Thank you. That's really, really good insight. So kind of moving on then from, the challenges we see, that the tech that's there in order to answer some of those challenges, kind of moving more on to kind of return on investment that we're seeing from these kind of technical areas. How does investing in tech really help with scalability? And shall I hand that over to yourself, Fraser?
Yeah, I think, when we start to think about the return, it kind of usually, as I kind of mentioned in the presentation, falls into kind of one of three buckets. It's either efficiency, so the return of efficient operations, or it could be about, revenue. So it's not necessarily about a business's process, but it's perhaps giving an insight as to kind of how you could sell more, upselling, that kind of hyper-personalization. And I think the final one is much more about autonomous processes, things that actually we get rid of all of the mundane tasks from an organization and allow that resource to deal with much more because they're dealing with the exceptions rather than the day-to-day. And those three elements kind of then fall together to then provide that return on investment.
Yeah, I think that really gives that kind of holistic picture. Maybe if I pass this one to you, Mark, what makes a company more resilient in today's market? What sort of things have you seen on the coalface?
I think one of the most interesting things is the tension from going all in on SaaS versus DIYing IT infrastructure. The companies that have invested in SaaS platforms have got an accelerator. The more cloud ready and enabled you are, the easier it is for you to take advantage of AI as it becomes available. The best example is if you've got, if you're literally running your business on the Microsoft stack using Office 365, your data's in there, your collaboration is in there. As soon as Microsoft come out with a great capability, you can just turn it on. You're stealing the march and all those people that haven't invested in getting the data and the onboarding into those capabilities. So the more cloud native you are, the easier it is for us to bring innovation, for you to move ahead quicker than the rest of the pack and embrace change as it comes.
Yeah, and I guess that takes us on to the final point, of the kind of ROI. It's that competitive advantage. Tech is tech, right? But how are you going to use and embrace that tech to either significantly increase and automate your own internal manual processes, or significantly increase that competitive edge? So I guess, Fraser, have you seen other areas where you've seen this tech really help competitive advantage?
Yeah, it's a funny one because at the end of the day, no business is static. So business is constantly changing. And we seem to have this really weird situation where we say, well, actually our business is changing all the time, but we're not going to change our business systems. We're not going to change our business operations. And it kind of keys into what Mark was talking about, agility. Agility equals change because nothing stays the same forever. And so, one of the things that we see repeatedly over and over is actually if you have an organization set up ready for change, then you will be successful because you'll be changing as your needs change for your clients. And I think that key element of change is critically important because any setup, any organizational infrastructure that you have that can change with your organization means you will be resilient and ready for the next challenge that your business faces.
Yeah, understood. And I guess we've all come across the skeptics that don't necessarily believe in AI, believe AI is a bit of a buzzword, but what do we all think? What's the cost of doing nothing? And this isn't to scaremonger, but what do we think? Mark, what would you think if you do nothing? What's the outcome of that?
Yeah, and I think the way that I view it is you either disrupt yourself and you get out of the comfort zone and you embrace the technology that's available to you, or someone else will, and then you'll be disrupted. Yeah. So the biggest risk is a leaner, meaner, more efficient version of you comes and takes your market share because they've embraced the technology that's available and they're taking advantage of all the features, the optimization, the efficiency that comes with it. So for me, it's not really a choice of if, it's when. You might not choose to do it today, but sooner or later, if your business model can be impacted by AI, by someone else, it will be.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, totally agree with that. And I think we've all seen from different customers that we've worked with, there's different ROI, there's different timescales. And from your experience, Fraser, on the projects you've worked with, what's probably like the most aggressive or an example of some ROI that you've seen with a customer?
Yeah, good question, Emma. I think I covered a couple of them in the presentation deck itself, but I mean, I think one of the clients that I've been working with recently described their ROI in weeks. So quite a small investment for a proof of value. But immediately, as soon as we scoped it and as soon as the clients saw the outputs, they were like, wow, this is transformative. And so the client is telling us that this enablement will be repaid back within 2 weeks.
Wow.
That's the speed of which these transformations can return back into the business value. And if you think about a return of 2 weeks, just imagine what all that extra time can be being used for in the organization.
That's extremely compelling. I remember back in the day, I won't say how many years ago when I worked for IBM, you saw return on investment, but you were really happy if it was an 18-month one, right? So 2 weeks, that's pretty cool. So thank you, team. You've given some really great insights and, really conscious that we've gone through everything sort of smart data related, whether it's to, return on investment, skilling up, whether it's tech. So I guess, Fraser, what I'd be really keen, is there one kind of call to action, one thing that anybody watching this webinar today could actually take away with them to get started on their data journey?
Yeah, I think if there was one thing to take away from today's session, it is do something. It's easy to say, but the reality is, data and tech is as transformative today as I've ever seen it. And even if it is as simple as to say, let's just give it a go. Let's try something. Let's try that one thing that's a real problem for our organization today. Let's try an AI generative data-based approach to do something different. And actually, that way you can start your journey. If you don't, others will already be doing it. And that's what I would say. Try it.
Thank you. Really compelling. And I'm also really interested, Divya, from a more of the sort of technical delivery perspective. What's the one thing that you would be promoting to anyone out there watching?
I think it's important the organizations look at their data, think about what data they have, where they have it, which is important, and think about what they can do about the data. Like more of a wish list, think of the possibilities. Maybe we won't get to everything in the first go, but yeah, start small, think of the possibilities and achieve one by one.
Thank you. That gives, really clear kind of call to actions for people. So thanks for that. And I guess just coming to you, Mark, on that whole, kind of wrapping up, looking at digital transformation, what do you think's the biggest myth out of the whole of digital transformation?
I think both Fraser and Divya have kind of touched on it. It doesn't have to be big. We're not talking that every digital transformation activity has to be many, many days or weeks of effort or thousands and thousands of pounds. You can start small. And in fact, starting small is probably the best thing to do. The other quite common reason people don't start is they think that the tech's going to be too hard for them or that it's not available. And I think one of the benefits that we've got is we can look across an entire portfolio of tech and choose the right thing that will help every one of our customers move forward, even if it's just a little bit.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. And I think, from myself, obviously, I did my short session on the Microsoft funding. The one thing I would say to people out there watching is find out if you've got Microsoft funding. As I mentioned, they have it there for good reason. And we all love spending Microsoft's money. Let's be perfectly honest about this. So I guess just to kind of wrap up, where can you get started? Clearly I've just said that the Microsoft funding is one great element, but we're really proud here at BCN that not only do we provide the assessments that you could take advantage of, we've created kind of defined Kickstarters away because you don't know what you don't know where to actually start. But it's just making sure that you're working with someone that can give you that full IT support. That full, as Fraser and Divya have both mentioned, what are you looking to do? Why? Where does that sit? How can I use it? But then help you do that and help you transform. And then at the end of it, help you on your ongoing journey, because it's not just something that happens once, right, guys? It's continuous. And if in the process of doing all that, Microsoft can fund huge chunks of that, then even better. So I would just like to thank you all very much for coming today, joining me. Thank you for the great insights. I've really appreciated it. And I hope everyone watching has found it useful. Thank you very much.